I believe that the single most important quality that any leader or human being can cultivate today is inner capacity. The capacity to be with paradox, to be with conflict, to be with a difficult situation and everything that might come up as a result. When I was a kid, my mother would challenge me on pretty much any position that I held. If I felt strongly about it, she would find a way to question it or make me question it. And of course, at the time, that was difficult. But as I've grown older, the benefit is that it's really given me the capacity to question my own positionality, to look more deeply at the beliefs that I hold, and to also look more deeply at the situatedness of other people's beliefs, to really recognize that everyone operates in their own context and the complexity of what happens when those contexts interact, when the way that the world occurs for me interacts with the way that it occurs for you. For me, capacity is about really first recognizing complexity, that there's so much complexity in the world. And second, about cultivating a deep embodied compassion and ability to be with the discomfort of whatever might be coming up for you internally, combined with a compassion to really see the relationship between yourself and another person as more than just what's happening, to recognize that that relationship is the outcome of an infinite chain of cause and effect. And if we don't look at that chain of cause and effect and the conditions that have led to how another person might be responding and how you might be responding, then we have a very limited and narrow perspective on a situation that inevitably will likely lead to conflict without resolution. This really opened up for me with the relationship with my mother when I recognized the conditions under which she grew up, under the oppression of Soviet Russia, and generational trauma going back to the Russian Revolution when her grandparents had been executed, and living in a world that was really unimaginable for me in the privilege that I had in my world, which was very much the result of everything that she had sacrificed for me to have the life that I do. And recognizing the complexity of all of that gave me the capacity to really hold space for her and the difficulty that I often encountered in that relationship, but allowed me to do so with a lot more wisdom and insight and ultimately gratitude. Now that's obviously a very specific example, but we live in a world with so much complexity, so much polarity and disagreement, and often that can translate into a certain righteous indignation or anger about everything going on in the world. And it's easy to respond from this position of being right and that the person or people on the other side of the situation are wrong. And as long as we hold that positionality, that polarity, it's very difficult for those situations to resolve in a way that don't lead to a future that is just another version of what happened in the past, right? So this is what we're talking about. How do we create a new future? How do we create the possibility of something new, of something that isn't just a repetition of what's already happened in the past? And the only way that we can do that is by stepping into real agency. Real agency, if you think about chain of cause and effect, right? If you are responding to what's already happened, then you are an effect, right? You're responding to the chain of everything that's already happened, then you are an effect. There is no agency there. Agency is when you can be a cause, and a cause entirely independent of what's happened in the past. And the only way to do that is by cultivating the capacity to recognize the complexity and to hold space for everything that might be coming up, and then to choose how to respond from a place of wisdom, being informed by the past, but not overly influenced by it. I want to offer you some simple ways that you might approach cultivating capacity. And this isn't a quick fix solution. Building internal capacity, building the capacity to look more deeply at a situation, it takes practice, it takes years, it takes a certain level of discipline. In my own experience, what's really worked for me has been a daily committed meditation practice and a daily movement practice. So any kind of meditation practice where you sit and just observe what comes up. Also, if there's discomfort that comes up, just sitting with that discomfort also offers a certain capacity. Often these things that come up in the situation of a conflict, they're incredibly uncomfortable, they're emotionally uncomfortable. And to really just be with that, to allow it to be without reacting, can take a lot of capacity. So when you sit and meditate and you have discomfort coming up, whether it's just really hard to focus your mind or your body starts to hurt, just holding space for that, allowing it to be, noticing what happens when it passes. It's kind of like going to the gym. You step into that resistance, and that gives you a certain amount of strength. Now, I want to offer you 3 lenses that you can work with here: mentally, emotionally, and physically. So mentally, you can inquire into the situation. You can ask, what really happened? What are just the facts of what happened? And then what is the meaning that I'm making out of that? What is my context? What is the context within which I'm operating? And then look more deeply at what is the meaning that the other person is making? How does the world occur to them? What is the context that they're operating in? When you can really recognize that the other person also has a context in which they are making meaning, in which the world occurs to them a particular way, then you can begin to really create a bridge and a deeper level of understanding and compassion for why they might be doing what they're doing. Now, emotionally, as I said, noticing the emotion and then tuning into the felt sense of that emotion, allowing yourself to really feel it. And this can be really difficult because sometimes, whether you have feelings of anger or shame or guilt, these are very unpleasant feelings that we subconsciously try to avoid feeling all the time. So really allowing the felt experience of an emotion to be fully processed in your body. And finally, physically, working with your breath or some kind of intentional movement practice to move that energy. For me, I work with Kundalini Yoga, and oftentimes what I'll find is a particular situation will come up in my body, so I'll feel it, and then I'll work with the movement. Kundalini Yoga is nice because it kind of has these short, rapid movements combined with breath work, and it allows me to keep my awareness on the felt experience of a particular emotion or challenging situation, and to work with it until I find it kind of loosening up inside my body, and then it resolves and gives me the capacity to be with it without being so triggered. So this is when you work through an internal trigger situation like that, it really opens up this territory to be with something without being overcome by the experience of it. I want to offer a couple more things you can do here. So we talked about mentally, emotionally, and physically. The other aspect of this is relationally, having somebody that you can process difficult situations with. And that works really well in a triad. When you have a triad of 2 other people that are committed to a similar process, you might meet once a week, every couple of weeks, to really process these deeper layers of what is triggering you, not as an intellectual conversation, but as a version of deep embodied witnessing. So you're with 2 other people and you share, and they don't give you advice or respond at an intellectual level. They receive and witness you at an embodied level. And again, it's almost like you're connecting with 2 other computer processing units to allow the energy of a situation to be processed, and that clearing up opens up your own capacity to be with more, to hold more. And finally, any kind of group experience, where there's this deeper level of relational presence that's being invited. It's kind of like a more expanded version of the triad. The triad is great because it's really focused and intensive, but with a group process where people are invited to share what's really present for them. And this is a great way to recognize complexity, that you hear somebody else sharing something that's true for them, especially if they have a different perspective or they've had a similar experience and they share about it in their own words. And then there's an opportunity to really discover something for yourself through the sharing of other people. All right, my friends, I hope this has been helpful. I truly believe that with everything going on in the world today, cultivating this capacity to really be with everything and to recognize the complexity and to respond with wisdom and true agency is the only way that we as a civilization can connect with our deepest humanity to create a world that works for everybody. Thank you so much for watching. So much love.